This is a problem from your skills review, and I've had a question about it, so I'm going to explain how to do this problem. The biggest part of the problem, I think, for most of you and from the person that asked about this was part E, but we're going to go through parts A, B, C, and D first so that you get the idea of how to go about part E. So we have a function called g of x, and g of x, as we see at the top of this page, is given as x subtracting 2 divided by the quantity same value of x plus 7. So we have the difference of x and 2 divided by the sum of x and 7. And so we're asked to find g of 3. And I don't think most of you will have any challenges with that part, because g of 3, you know at this point, simply means you're going to plug in 3 in place of x. So g of 3 is 3 minus 2 divided by 3 plus 7. And since 3 minus 2 is 1, and 3 plus 7 is 10, then g of 3 is equal to 1 over 10. Then second, we're asked to evaluate g of 2. And again, that's just simply replacing x with the quantity 2. So g of 2 is going to be 2 minus 2 over 2 plus 7. And since 2 minus 2 is 0, and 2 plus 7 is 9, that's 0 over 9. And since we can divide 0 by 9, we arrive at the simplified answer of simply 0. Then next, we're asked to find g of negative 7. So again, we're going to replace x with negative 7. And that's going to give us negative 7 minus 2 over negative 7 plus 7. And since negative 7 minus 2 is negative 9, and negative 7 plus 7 is 0, we have the quantity 9 over 0, and since division by 0 is not allowed, then we say that g of negative 7 is undefined. And you'll hear me say several times throughout the semester that there are two cardinal sins in mathematics. One of them is division by 0. You cannot divide by 0, which means there can't be zeros in the denominator of any kind of fraction or rational expression. And the second one is that you cannot take even roots of negative numbers, since if you're taking a root, you're actually looking for a number times itself that gives you the number you're trying to take the root of. And if the number is negative, it doesn't have two factors that have the same sign. So those are two things that I will be reminding you of periodically. G of negative 17.25 is actually very similar. So g of negative 17.25 means we're going to take negative 17.25 and subtract 2 from it. And then after we make that calculation, we're going to take negative 17.25 and we're going to add 7 to it. So when we subtract 2 from it, we get negative 19.25. And when we add 7 to it, we're going to get negative 10.25. And most likely what you're going to want to do here is actually evaluate that on your calculator. And if you evaluate that with your calculator, which I'm going to do right now, although I can't show it to you. I take negative 19.25 and divide it by negative 10.25. And the quantity that I get as a decimal is 1.87804,878. Which is also the quantity 77 over 41. So I got that answer on the calculator, but since we started with a decimal, it would be acceptable to give the answer as a decimal. So the answer as a decimal is going to be 1.8708. I'm sorry, 1.7804. And the number actually continues on to 8, 7, 8, 0, 4. And since this is the pattern of repetition, then you can actually write that as 1.87804 with a line across the top of it that shows that those digits just continue to repeat forever. And the reason you know that's what's going to happen is because it does actually simplify into a fraction. And it's not going to be just a decimal that's going to randomly have digits coming after the decimal. So now we're going to talk about the part that's giving everybody the most trouble. And that means we're going to talk about Part E. Part E asks us to calculate g of x plus h. So the way that we're going to calculate g of x plus h is actually the same way that we calculated everything else. G of x plus h actually is going to be x plus h in place of the x, so x plus h minus 2. And x in the denominator is going to be replaced with x plus h plus 7. And since we can't actually simplify that any further, then this is actually our answer. We can't combine the x and the negative 2. We can't combine the h and the negative 2. We can't cancel the x's and the h any more than we could cancel the x's here in the original expression. Because if you cancel the x's, then you have negative 2 over 7. And of course, if you have different values of x, you can see here, here, and here that isn't always going to be negative 2 over positive 7. So what you don't do is you make sure that you understand that you do not cancel the x's or the h's. So your final answer is that expression right there. And when you type it in, be sure in My Math Lab that you type it in so that all of this that's in the numerator is actually in the numerator, and then everything that's in the bottom is actually in the denominator. And hopefully this will help, but if you have questions, be sure and just simply make a comment, and I'll be glad to try to elaborate and help you with your questions.